And good afternoon from Philadelphia. Frank here for a special Saturday edition of UFO News Network Sunday. We've got a big show lined up for you today. Dean Alioto, producer, director of Alien Abduction, and or UFO Abduction, and also Alien Abduction Incident in Lake County, is with us today to talk all about those experiences and his current work in the UFO field. Before we get to all that, though, I do want to plug tomorrow's show. It's another 2-for-1 weekend. We've got tomorrow afternoon, author of American Cosmic, Dr. Diana Pasulka, is going to be joining us to talk all about her trip down the rabbit hole and her involvement in this UFO craziness. So that's going to be a fantastic show too. But let's not beat around the bush. Let's get to our guest. And to bring him on, I've got my co-host for the day, the one and only Chant Hanna. Good afternoon, Chant.
Good afternoon, Frank. Thank you for having me on. We have a really special show today with an incredible person. His name is Dean Alioto. He studied film at both University of Southern California and San Francisco State University. Predating both The Last Podcast and the Blair Witch Project, Alioto's found footage movie Alien Abduction, Incident in Lake County, featured a family being abducted by aliens as told from the point of view of a family member's home video camera. The footage was purportedly found by a sheriff in Lake County. UFO Abduction, created in 1989, was written, directed, filmed, and produced by Dean Alioto through Indie Syndicate Productions. The film presented as found footage similar to 1999's The Blair Witch Project, which presents the final recordings and last known whereabouts of the Van Hees family just before they're abducted by extraterrestrials. Dean Alioto produced this film using $6,500. Dean Alioto remade UFO Abduction in 1997, which was later released in January of 1998 for UPN TV with a larger budget and professional actors, into Alien Abduction, Incident in Lake County, also known as the McPherson Tape. According to Dean's website, the iconic Dr. Jacques Vallée called Dean's movie the most realistic alien abduction movie ever. This movie has become a cult classic. It has quite a cult following and is considered on one of the first found footage movies ever, which predates The Last Broadcast and the Blair Witch Project movie. Alioto's theatrical film debut, Crashing Eden, won several national and international awards. This dark satire was praised by Variety, singling out Alioto's writing and his ability to work with actors. Alioto's second film, L.A. Dix, told the story of two Los Angeles detectives who pitched their real-life cases to Hollywood. The film went on to receive the Spirit Award at the Toronto International Rebel Fest Film Festival. And now it looks like Dean Alioto is on to another project, which he's currently working on, called Portal, supernatural horror and dark comedy. Not quite finished yet, but will be by the end of next month. Dean, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chant. And thank you, Frank, for having me on the show.
I'm very glad that you're with us today. I have a lot of questions for you, as does Frank. Could you please tell us about the original Alien, the UFO Abduction movie, on up to the remake of it?
Sure. The impetus for it was twofold. First one was I needed to make my first film by the age of 25 because all of my idols had filmmaking idols had, from Orson Welles to Spielberg, Scorsese, etc. And so I was on the prowl for an idea. And around that time, I had read the book Communion, and it completely terrified me. I'd been a big Stephen King fan, but the fact that this was, whether true or not, the fact that it was believed by this respected author and was presenting the alien experience, interacting with aliens in the what is become, for me at that moment, became the kind of iconic example of an alien abduction, was just mind-blowing. And so I had read that, and all along my life as a kid, I remember seeing I think it was called the UFO incident, or the Barney and Betty Hill incident, Interrupted Journey, which was the TV movie with James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons.
That's a good movie. It's
a really good movie.
Yeah, it's very well acted.
Isn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
And that was actually the first time that we saw the small gray-headed aliens with the big eyes, almond-shaped eyes. And then Close Encounters, I believe that was in 74, and then Close Encounters in 77. And so those two films just really kind of tapped into my whole imagination. And as a kid growing up, divorced parents, living away from my brothers, there was a period of 3 years where I was just with my father. And I remember in Sacramento looking out through the window and just staring at the stars and knowing that there's something more than what we have here. And here were films that were telling us that, yes, actually there are. And so I always had interest in esoteric things such as, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, stuff like that, Bermuda Triangle. But I kept coming back to the alien abduction theme and sci-fi in general. And so flash forward many years later, I'm about 23, 24, and so I see this kind of deadline that I've set for myself as a filmmaker. And so after reading the book Communion, I had seen that, and I was talking to a friend of mine who said that he wanted to be a producer and knew I was a filmmaker and wanted to throw in some money. And I said, well, great. Well, how much do you have to do this first film? He said, well, I've got $6,500. And I did exactly that. I laughed. And I was like, okay, all right, well, thank you. But no, I don't think I can do that. And then I was on and in fact, I made a joke. I said the only thing I could do with that is, shoot a home video. And I'm trying to make a movie. And then a week later, I was flying from San Francisco to LA to do a pitch. And as I was flying out, I was on the tarmac, and it was we call it magic hour. And the flight was delayed on the tarmac. We're waiting there. Magic hour turns into dusk, which turns into night. And we started taking off, and we're kind of chasing along the horizon, and we see as the sun's going down one side and the other side it's dark. And for some reason, I looked down as I was leaving my town that I grew up in, Burlingame, which is next to the San Francisco airport. And I thought, wow, what if this was the last time that I was seeing a planet? I was being taken. And I thought, and I'm looking out there from the window, the portal of the plane. And I thought, how do I capture this moment, this view, and just this idea of being taken? And then it hit on me that the only way we can do that is if you have someone who, experiences this and do it through their camera. And so I called him the next day, and my buddy, and I said, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to make a home video. And he's like, yeah, right. And I go, no, seriously. And I laid it out for him. It's going to be, a family. They'll be up in the hills in a nice little secluded home/cabin. They'll be gathering for a family member's 5th birthday party. And this kid just bought himself a new video camera, Betamax camera, after his father recently passed away. So there's a loss in the family. So there's kind of a little fallout from that. So he took his inheritance, whatever he had, a little bit, and he bought this expensive camera, which the other brothers aren't too happy about. And so they experience a blackout. The brothers go out to investigate, and they see a ship and aliens. And one by one, they get abducted. And we shot this all. The conceit was to do it all in one night, have it be like a beat sheet, and I wrote out all the scenes that were going to happen, and then there was room across the board. The whole thing was pretty much improvised, based on the rehearsals that we did. I generated something of a treatment, and then and again, all of the ship designs and the aliens are all taken from drawings and articles that I could find about people who have claimed to have been abducted. And so I tried to keep it to the letter of law of, how everything went down. And so it was kind of my way of experiencing something that I don't know that I ever want to experience, and show us firsthand of what that must be like. And so that's how it came about.
And just to jump in here really quick, the aliens in this ship look pretty darn good for such a low budget. Were you a little bit intimidated? Obviously, the finished product looked fine. You should be very happy with it, considering what you got for what you spent. But going into that that would seem to me like maybe the biggest sticking point, making some kind of credible-looking aliens, which look very good, and maybe they wouldn't have looked quite so good under real full lighting and all that. But the way it was shot, the ship and the aliens, they look just fine. They look fantastic.
Well, that credit goes to Bill Bowes, who's a production designer. And he would go on to do the Scooby-Doo films and do the first Fantastic Four films. He also worked with Tim Burton on James and the Giant Peach. Extremely talented guy that I had met a couple years before I made the film. And I knew he could pull it off. I had great confidence in him. He also worked on RoboCop, and I've seen him generate amazing special effects, practical effects. And so the biggest stress was that we needed to have this all happen within a certain time frame. His budget was only $750. And I remember when we got out to the set, the only moment where I was like, oh no, this might not happen, is we get out to the set and he's got sheet wood and he's got some 2x4s and he's got foam core, which is basically kind of like sheet wood, the dimensions of sheet wood, but what it is it's like a kind of like styrofoam, thin inside, and then on one side it's usually black, on the other side's white. And we use it in the film business, or photographers use it to reflect light into it to bounce it off, but it's basically like cardboard. And so he shows up with that, and I'm like, and he's got a few little trinket stuff that an old vacuum hose and stuff like that. And I'm just scratching my head going, I don't get how this is going to become a ship that's supposed to be 12 feet high. And so he goes here and he measures off and he starts having me cut the foam core into triangles. And so I'm doing that while he's building one platform. Then he builds another one. And so he's got all these sections going up, and there's like maybe 4 of these things or 5 of these things. And it starts out kind of small and then gets a little bit fatter and then goes up. And then he takes the squares and he goes, all right, now we're going to staple gun these on around from, bridging each, layer, level, like little mini floor, to the next one. So each bit of, sheet wood that's foam, that's framing the core, if you can imagine this, we're now putting an outside skin on it that's just made of this foam core stuff. And then he gets white tape and we tape all the seams. And what's brilliant about Bill is he knew that it would read for camera. It might not, up close, but it doesn't have to.
Right.
And so then, we took that and we put some holes in the top around it and put some light in, and then gave it a little bit of backlight and put a little bit of smoke. And then when he put all these little trinkets that he got, I don't know if he got them from the dump or whatever, but he had all these little hoses and stuff and put those in, and it just came alive, came to life that day. So that was, I give him all the, credit for that. And then the masks he created, and then hands. The only thing that's left right now are the hands. I have one pair of the hands. The masks all deteriorated, but the rubber that he used for the hands still works. But that, and then the kids that played the actual aliens, they get the other half of the credit, because they had to walk out there with these costumes and these helmets, basically, that you couldn't really see out of. And so they all had to walk in unison and look and hit all this stuff. And, they killed it. They did great.
It was a very effective scene. It really was.
I wanted to mention some of the influences you had early on. You already mentioned a few of them, which was Communion, which was a huge book for you, recounting what happened to Whitley Strieber, the TV show In Search Of, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and the Betty and Barney Hill story. A third of what you've written is UFO and extraterrestrial related, Dean. Again, you also gravitated towards books that were outside of the reality you had as a kid. Would it be safe to assume you'll always be exploring this kind of phenomena as a filmmaker? Will it always be part of your repertoire?
I think so. I don't know why I'm so drawn to it. I mean, the fantastical. I think when you're a divorced kid, the idea of anything other than reality is appealing, because your reality at that time, going through the divorce and, you know, the kind of fallout and collateral damage after, you know, leaves you with a lot of time on your hand. And this is before smartphones and stuff like that. There were no distractions. You were, you know, just there in the moment. And so I think that it'll always be with me, because, you know, as we get more information, this gets updated, you know, and as the narrative of film, you know, having done the first found footage film, I didn't know I was creating a new narrative. It was just out of budgetary means, really. You know, I kind of felt like, okay, well, I know this is kind of gimmicky, but it was, you know, cinema verite, just trying to present something as realistic as possible and not worrying about the conventions of cinema. So I would say that as long as I can find ways to do that as a filmmaker, inventive ways, and I can shed new light on it, I want to continue exploring that. And I've already got, you know, a few scripts written that that I want to do coming up here next. One of them is actually a documentary as well. And so 2 documentaries. And so once I start doing that and see how the audience reacts and everything, that'll kind of dictate where I go from there. But I have a soft spot, you know, for them. It's funny. One of the things about these podcasts is that, you know, Coast to Coast, I found myself listening to that. And when I was having insomnia, I remember using it as kind of a way to help me fall asleep, because it reminded me when I was a kid, you know, when you would hear parents talking, or your parents would have guests over, and you'd hear them downstairs talking and laughing and having to communicate, and you'd fall asleep to that. And and so that really kind of got me back into it. And then when I started listening to more and more, it reinvigorated. So it's a cyclical thing with me. So the short answer, which I did not give you, is that it's something that's always in my orbit. I think I will always be playing in that world and trying to find, you know, the truth.
Now, let me get this one in real quick here, Chant. You had talked about the change in technology since the late 80s when you made the original film. One thing now, this podcast is streaming live. People can listen to it right this minute, or they can pick it up later if they go over to the YouTube channel. Anybody on the face of the planet with an internet connection has access to this. You did not have that kind of an advantage when you made the original film. How did you get the film out? How did it get any attention at all?
Well, it didn't originally, because basically we made a home video. And so we drove down, my executive producer and I, we drove down to Los Angeles and pitched it to everyone. We would show a 5-minute little trailer, and everyone said the same thing, you know, which was basically, what the hell is this? Why are you taking up my time with this weirdness? Come back when you've made a real movie, punk. I had one woman just go off on me, and then we had, you know, one meeting we had our last meeting at the end of the 3 days that we were in town.
And you showed him the money shots. You showed him the aliens and the ship too.
Yeah,
they get to see that part.
Yeah. Oh, everything. But
wow.
Here's the thing. It's good to be the first with something, but it's not good to be ahead of the curve to a degree that it hasn't hit the zeitgeist yet. And this was 10 years too early, not just 1 year, 10 years. Blair Witch didn't come out till 10 years later. And so it was something that I knew was a kind of a tough sell, but I thought they would, you know, take it and go, oh my God, this is, you know, fun and original, and let's just see what happens. No. So we get back home really discouraged, and then we get a call from the last person that we met with. His name was Declan Kavanaugh. And he had a company called Legacy Home Entertainment. And they said, hey, we'll take a run at this. And that's what they did. And so I called them a month later and said, hey, how's it going? And I said, I haven't heard anything from you guys. And he said, oh, well, that's because the warehouse burned down. And I said, what do you mean? your office? No, 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 the warehouse. We have all the films and stuff, and I'm afraid your master tape was one of those, and all the artwork. So, not so great. And so that was it. I had my original source tapes that we had recorded on, but all the artwork was gone. And so I was kind of like, well, crap. All right, well, at least I did it. I got my first film out there. Time to move on. And so went about my career doing, I worked on a show called Totally Hidden Video for Fox, and then I started directing crime reenactments. 5 years goes by, and I get a call from this guy. People may have heard of him, infamous now, Sean David Morton. And he says, hey, I'm trying to track down who found this footage, which is the first time the term I'd ever used that or heard that before. And I said, well, that's, the film I did. And he says, what do you mean you did? And I said, well, it's not found, we made it. And he's like, okay, well, do you know what's been going on for the past 5 years? And I go, dude, I haven't a clue. I don't even know who you are. He says, all right, well, apparently some mom and pop video stores got screeners, advanced screeners of my film. And someone much more clever than I edited off the credits and injected it into the UFO community, where it made the rounds, finally ending up at the International UFO Congress convention, where Tom Dongo reported that it was authentic, and Lieutenant Colonel Don Ware backed that up. And so the fallout from that was Sean calling me saying, Unsolved Mysteries and Hard Copy and this Fox show called Encounters all want to do a story on us. And a little funny side note is I said, okay, well, I guess Unsolved Mysteries is out because they only deal with mysteries. And Sean goes, not necessarily. I'm like, no, this has been solved. So we went with the Fox show Encounters, and as this greatest UFO hoax thing, and then that was the first time that I really kind of knew what was going on with it, and didn't know too much about the UFO community as a whole. And then I started getting phone calls. This is before the internet. So I started getting phone calls from UFOologists and people just interested from all times of the day and night, from as far away as, Brazil and Japan and everything, wanting to see this thing that they all believed it was real. And I kept telling them it's not. And they said, okay, well, let me see it and let me judge for myself. And so that went on for a few years, and they were so strident about it and sure of themselves that I actually, and I'd been offered to go to conventions before, and I was a little bit nervous about that because I didn't know what I was stepping into. And in fact, I remember going to a little mini conference that was in San Francisco, and next to the airport, I remember going in there, and they were showing this UFO that was circling around this plane, this little orb thing. And I'm a filmmaker. And I looked at it and I said, oh, this is a lens flare. Watch how the color changes here and how it kind of, it's translucent here and then it comes back around. That is, that's a lens flare. And I can show you a zillion examples of that. And everyone turned around and looked at me like, who is this, this outsider and this debater. And I think that's probably not the best forum to do it. There's a better way to deliver that. But it was a small little group and everything, and they were, there for that thing, and maybe I was too dismissive, and so that was my representation of every single UFO convention in the world. So, yeah. I, didn't do anything about that. But anyway, that's kind of where the first movie I did played out. That kind of wrapped up that history on that.
Dean, at UFO Congress for the 25th anniversary showing of your film, you revealed never seen before footage of the movie. What was the reaction from the audience? Can you explain their reaction having seen this footage for the very first time that you revealed to the public?
Yeah, well, the footage, it was very close to what we had. I went back to the originals and I digitally remastered it and up-resed it. So, because I didn't want to go in there and change what has become a film that is followed by a lot of people. I didn't want to mess with that version and do like a director's cut, because my cut was a director's cut. What I did do is I included the behind the scenes stuff, and at the convention I showed, just to finally, because there's still people that believe that the original, here's what the prevalent conspiracy theory is. It's that the remake I did for UPN is accepted by most people as being a remake and not being real. But they believe that, a lot of people believe that the original is real, and that to kind of throw people off, I was maybe co-opted by the government or whatever to do a remake to kind of discredit the original. And so,
and you're confirming officially here that that is not the case, correct?
Yes, that is
okay.
not the case. And so, to put this to rest, I showed the audition of the mother in the original UFO Abduction. And she tells this great story about her seeing her own UFO in Oklahoma, and which in part was probably why she got the gig. I mean, she's a great actress. But yeah, so showed that, and everyone, it was like, oh my God, okay, all right, I get it. And then they can kind of sit back and then take it in as this film that, ahead of, most of the other films that followed later, that I had, delved into what that experience was like, and for the first time cinematically, and so the reaction was great, and everyone laughed and had fun with it. I got to tell you, speaking at, Alejandro Rojas was like, come to the festival, or come to the convention. We're going to do this big anniversary thing. It'll be fun. You'll speak for 75 minutes. And then, but everyone's cool. And I'm like, wait, back up. What'd you say? 75 minutes? You're not going to do a Q&A? And he goes, no. It's more of a lecture. And I'm like, okay, wait, what? A lecture? I got to talk for 75 minutes straight? And he's like, yeah. Everyone does it. It'll be terrific. I'm sure there's a lot to say about this. And I'm going, holy crap. Okay, I got to get stage. I don't think maybe there's going to be 30 people. Well, no, it's close to 1,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
And so I go, okay, all right, we'll give it a shot. He's like, no. He says, they've got a great sense of humor. Trust me. Forget about all your fears that you have. These people, and I said, well, all right, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to bring levity to it, because this genre, or this phenomena, needs levity, like everything. Stephen Hawking had a hell of a sense of humor. So did Albert Einstein. And so it's like, all right, let's, So anyway, they came out there, and, we had technical difficulties. At first, the sound was off, and it came on. Typical, snafus that happen in production. But, I gave my lecture, and then, we showed it the second night there, and they enjoyed it. And, so it was well received, and the new copy looks really, really good.
And you just spoke. Did you have a PowerPoint presentation or anything like that backing you up?
Yeah, well, Alejandro, he's the best. He's like, so do you have all of your PowerPoint thing? And I'm like, what do you mean PowerPoint thing? He goes, well, show pictures and video. And I said, well, I'm just going to talk about it, really. I mean, And he's like, you might want to go on YouTube and take a look at some of the other speakers. And I go, cool, okay. So I go online, and I call him back. I'm like, Jesus, dude, are you serious? He's like, yeah, just throw some pictures up there. I'm like, no, it's not just pictures. It's like, this is like TED Talks times 10. And so I'm going, oh my God, this is like, I'm setting myself up to fail here. But so I go, and I'm up to like 75 images and video clips and all this stuff. And I'm trying to time it and everything, and not be reading the whole time. And so I get out there, and have it all lined up. And the first thing I did was to test the audience to make sure that these guys are going to be cool. And so I said, I read to them my favorite fan letter. And by the way, you can actually purchase this, the lecture that I gave at the International UFO Congress Convention website. And I read the letter, my favorite fan letter, which was this guy who was saying, I need a copy of your movie really bad. he says, so he's going to be a little off-colored here. He says, my girlfriend gets really horny when she gets scared. And your movie scared me more than any other film. I need to show it to you. I need to show it to her. I need you to understand how really, 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 really important this is to me. And I said, I don't know if this guy's writing from his mom's basement or whatever,
Right.
but I get it. It is important to you.
I get it.
So, I mean, it's been a fun ride across the board because there's that. And there's one woman said she almost had a miscarriage because she was so terrified. I've had kids, plenty of kids email me who have grown up that still sleep with the light on. And I tell them, I go, that's messed up. I'm so sorry.
That's
like, no, man, it's great. You got me interested in things that are interesting and outside the norm. And so anyway.
Yeah, you mentioned Levity the last time I interviewed you, and I wanted to ask you, you once said you would like to add levity to the field of ufology and be a barometer. In what way?
Well, here's the thing. The term rabbit hole is used a lot in this field, going down the rabbit hole. You don't want to get caught too far down the rabbit hole. So I keep one foot in the rabbit hole and one always out. And so whenever I hear about anything that's coming down the pike, there's some new footage or some new story. For me, it's, Occam's razor. It's like, okay, well, let's first rule out all of the obvious plausible explanations. And then let's see what we're left with. But it has to be broken down. It can't be, it's kind of like food. You don't bring a sandwich in and shove the whole thing in whole. You've got to break it down into bite-sized chunks and then take it in slowly. And I find that there are those who believe, and hands down, that's it. That's just how things are. And the fact that I've never seen a UFO, I still want to believe in that, but I can't say that I know for sure that this has happened. I can say that I believe that people have had experiences for sure, and that they believe that they've had those experiences. But for me, I feel like the barometer that I'm bringing is saying, all right, well, let's test this. Let's throw it up and let's test the fabric of it. Because I make movies and I have done films with special effects, I'm pretty good at spotting footage that has been augmented. And so, I always like to call out people that are doing that stuff. I mean, they're usually easy to spot because the first thing is online YouTube, they're anonymous. They don't want to talk. They don't want to reveal their identity. Mm-hmm. I call BS on the time. It's like, oh, come on.
Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, as you know so well, because you grew up reading that book, probably repeatedly, is just a guess on my part, but it made a splash when it hit the market. It gave a stereotype of what a gray would look like, a gray alien. Some people claimed they could and could not look at the cover of that book. And also some people said that it put them in a position of actually having what they referred to as flashbacks of real encounters that they felt they had with this type of extraterrestrial. Could you parallel your movie to that book cinematically?
Yeah, there were people, for sure. In fact, Tom Dongo talks about his experience on the Fox behind the scenes footage on the DVD. He talks about how someone was looking over his shoulder at the alien. And he said, that's what dead aliens look like. I've seen them before. Their eyes concave like that. And so that was the first time that I had ever heard someone talking about they've had experiences where they've, not only seen aliens, but they've seen aliens that have been deceased. That was interesting. And the guy it sounded like the guy was freaked out who was saying that. Now, we didn't intentionally concave the eyes. It just happened that the design looked like that, the way that the light was hitting it when we shot that scene. But yeah, I've gotten plenty of people that have said this is a true representation of what it's like when they see them and the shape and everything. And, it's become kind of this iconic, commercialized, branded image. But at the time, it was, you know, it was kind of scarce to find that, because again, you do Close Encounters and that was it as far as, you know, movies go. And so when mine came along, it was like, oh wow, here's some more, you know, here's some more examples of what I'm, you know, experiencing, you know. So.
And Dean, really quick, you felt like Close Encounters was more of, well, there were some elements, especially involving the lady's kid, the younger kid who was kidnapped, and obviously caused a lot of stress there. But for the most part, that movie was more of a positive type contact movie. In the end, you know, it was a positive movie, whereas you took on more of the E.T. as monster type approach. Can you talk a little bit about that, about the differences between the two? There don't seem to be as many positive contact movies, positive UFO movies, as there are the monster type films.
Sure. Well, Close Encounters had both. What I love about that film, and probably why it's my favorite film, E.T. was for the longest time was my favorite film, but I keep going back, even though Close Encounters came out beforehand. I keep going back to Close Encounters because it focused on the wonderment, you know, the wonderment of looking out at the night stars, of you know, other worlds, other people out there, and then also the spiritual journey of someone compelled to do something, where they feel like there's a greater purpose. You know, my goal is to be able to, you know, create something, one of my films, to come close to that mark where you feel, you know, here's someone going on a journey that's not just a journey for monetary gain, but here's something for spiritual gain. That's really profound. And that's why I think for a lot of people that film is this spiritual, wonderful experience. But in that film, here the aliens come and kidnap this little kid. They don't knock on the door. They don't, you know, show up. They literally rip him through a doggy door. And they're, you know, throwing knives that are, you know, things are spinning. None of that is based on anything that anyone has ever said that they've experienced. Zero. No one's ever talked about their, you know, going out through a doggy door. But it showed the power of them doing this. Why are they doing this? It just increased the stakes of why, what is going on here, the mystery of it. And so, and then at the end, there's this beautiful communion where you're, you know, going up and meeting them and doing sign language and stuff. And it's all great and wonderful. And, you know, I don't need to go inside the ship. Don't need to see it. I get it. Here we are, two species of creatures in the, you know, universe connecting. Then you've got E.T. E.T. is much more, for me, in a way, more accurate. You know, here's the ship, it comes down, and they're taking samples or whatever. Well, that would make sense, certainly. One of them gets left behind. And the innocence between, you know, a child and this creature, you know, there's nothing pernicious or terrifying in any way about that. It's you know, the innocence of a kid is met with the innocence of, you know, someone from another planet, that mixture, and then throw in a little Christ, you know, symbolism, you know, who literally dies and then he comes back and everything, spoiler alert. You know, you've got, you know, a potent story. And so you know, and then Spielberg's third alien film, which, you know, War of the Worlds, not crazy about that film, really, was more, you know, going with the, you know, typical attacking the Earth. The other two films for me are much more plausible and resonate, you know, with me, someone who follows the genre, because the reality is if someone wanted to come here from another planet, super, super easy if they ever wanted to take over this planet.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up E.T. because that's a film that I was actually planning on asking you about. Compared to a lot of the other contact films that Close Encounters, obviously, there's also Contact, the Sagan movie, or the movie based on his book. There are some others as well. But E.T. was a huge hit when it was first released. One of the top box office films of all time in its day. Yeah, in its day. And I don't think it has stood the test of time as well as some of these other Contact films. Maybe you feel differently about it, but from what I see and from talking to folks, it's just not at the top of their list when they talk about positive contact movies.
How dare you? E.T. is a perfect film.
I didn't say it was a bad film. I just said that
here's what it is.
It just doesn't seem
I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. It's dated. And where it's dated is when the first time you saw it, it was this, again, this mystery of what is this about and how would that be? And it's been cliched and copied so long and so derivative that the only thing that's left right now, and this is why, I mean, I just saw it last year or 2 years ago at the Hollywood Bowl, where Thomas Newman did the soundtrack, live performance of the soundtrack for it. And the audience were crying and everything, loved it. Great to see it in the big screen.
Yeah.
The thing that holds up more than anything in that film, I swear to God, is the situational comedy. It's slapstick. I mean, there's a lot of comedy. I didn't realize how funny it was. And I've seen that film probably 15 times in my life. And I hadn't seen it for a while and saw it again. I'm like, oh my God, this is hysterical. I mean, the physical, you know, when the brother sees him for the first time, he falls back against the shelves, it collapses.
Yep.
And the camera pans over and you know, he's, you know, E.T.'s hiding with all the other stuffed animals. They dress him up. I mean, there's a shitload, excuse me.
That's all right. We're on YouTube. You can swear your head off.
You can say whatever you want. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Get all your 4-letter words out now, Dean, while you have the chance.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull on my list. Let me get it ready. And so, anyway, that to me holds up. And that is, you know, that's timeless. And so...
and so is Drew Barrymore.
And so is Drew Barrymore, yeah. So, I mean, my feeling on that is, yeah, it doesn't, you know, we don't look at it and it doesn't have the reality anymore, which is why Spielberg wanted to augment it with CGI, which was a bad impulse, I think. And even he says, yeah, I shouldn't have messed with that, and especially taking away the guns from the officers who were trying to apprehend the kids when they were driving, you know, with ET, you know, replace them with radios. It was like, okay, enough PC. Please don't mess with the clock.
And one more quick question about another positive contact movie that I think is a little bit underrated. Don't know if you've seen it or not. I want to ask you about it really quick. If you have, if you give us a real quick thumbnail review of it. And that is Mission to Mars, the De Palma film.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I ever saw that.
Really? Okay.
Is it good?
I recommend it. I do. I think it's really underrated. I do.
Huh. Yeah, I know that the story was really good. But, yeah, I didn't see that. I like The Martian, separate story. But, yeah. No, well, the other thing is I wanted to circle back to the problem that I kind of have with the aliens invading story is that if I'm an alien species, I mean, we can do this pretty much now. We could inject, you know, they could inject an airborne. They wouldn't even have to land. They just send out a probe, inject an airborne disease that wipes out everyone, and one that probably, you know, because there's those diseases that make your insides, you know, melt. They could create something that does that, wipes out everyone, and then come in, you keep all the buildings and everything, and then, you know, move in tomorrow. So, you know, the idea that Sagan said, you know, which is, you know, if they're coming all the way here, they're not going to be, you know, there's a chance of that. Whereas Stephen Hawking was like, no, I think that there's a chance. We don't want to send out Voyager, and we want to recall it and bring it back because we're still, you know, here we are 2019, and we're still bifurcated. We're still fighting. We're still in our pettiness stages. And Carl Sagan had laid out, you know, where there's certain levels of evolution, and we're not even at the first one yet. So.
Dean, the last time I interviewed you, you mentioned your friend who's well known in the ufology community, Bryce Sable. He asked you, what is this phenomena, what this phenomena is? And you said it is all and none of the above. It could be interdimensional, from the future, from the past. But more interesting is, why has there been no full-on sit-down interview confirmation of this phenomena, and why maybe should this not happen?
Okay, first of all, that text was private between Bryce and I. So
Chant's a known leaker. You can't keep a secret involving her.
I think that that the disclosures already happened, and it's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And the version that all the Stevens in the UFO community, you know who I'm talking about, that they want is not, I don't think, ever going to happen, because there's no need for it. I think they've, all you have to do is do a little bit of research on the Zimbabwe aerial school incident, where 60 kids of all races and religions saw a ship come down and saw two beings come out, communicated with them without talking, and all the kids had the same experience. And to this day, this was in '94, to this day, they still stand by what they saw. You can't create that. Even the teacher said when all the kids came in to tell them what they had witnessed, because they were having a teacher conference, it was a recess, they said, kids don't get this organized ever. We can't get them this organized. They were all lined up outside the door to tell them what they had seen. And they were crying and freaked out and everything. And there was a message that we need to pay attention to the planet. We need to start treating it as a living being. And so, people that have the experiencers that have had their own experience. Yvonne Smith took me to one of her classes, and I got a chance to sit in. And these are, people of very reputable professions and stuff having this experience. And I got to say, I was, I didn't know what to expect when I came in there. And so, these guys laid it all out for me. And while there is that component of the being examined and everything that is terrifying, and the helplessness, which that to me will always be horrific. I think that they always leave with the message, which is, you've got to take care of, your backyard. And so I think that it already is being done. I think disclosure is happening to those people that they want to, get out there in the world. And the percentage of how many people have been abducted worldwide is 40 million. And did the math on how many people claim to have been abducted and stuff. And if these people are, if that's legit, that's 40 million people a year are having their own personal disclosures. That's a more intimate way to do it. And these people all influence, and it's changed their lives, and they live a different life, and they're much more holistic. And so for me, that is happening. To have a UFO land on the White House lawn, first of all, they're going to be shot at. We already have issues with cops, some cops, shooting indiscriminately. Can you imagine that? And then what is that going to do? I mean, we pervert everything, man. We screw up everything. And so to have these aliens come down, we're going to, there will be fighting. Are they going to be on Fox News? Are these alt-right, or are they leftist, socialist beings? Not even to get into the religion. But the thing that's interesting, hand in hand with that, is you've got the Nimitz thing. You've got that footage, credible, people, the New York Times coming out, and someone who was, had won the Pulitzer Prize writing about it as well. I mean, it's been validated in that way, and no one freaked out. No one jumped out of buildings. If you see the podcast I did with Martin and with Nick Pope, and with Travis Walton was there also, was oh my God, just went out of my brain.
Friedman. Stanton Friedman was there.
Yeah.
The Godfather there. Mm-hmm. All of us were there talking about it, and
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and the thing is that I brought up the point. I said, no one freaked out. Everyone was like, oh yeah, okay. Well, I knew that was real anyway, because the Pew report shows that most Americans believe, 80% believe, that there is life on other planets. So everyone, for 2 weeks, it was a big, whoop to do. And not everyone this time played the theme to X-Files when they showed the footage in the news. And so it was much more taken in as a serious news event. And then people went on with their lives. So I don't think it's really that, the government's afraid that people will do this and that. It's just, if I'm the government and I have some allegiance with these guys, Russia, China, everyone's going to say, hold on, spread the love. Where's the technology for me to have it? And I don't want other countries having it. I don't even want our country to have any kind of technology that could be, perverted into a weapon. But that's what we do. So we're still not ready really for that. So,
well, you cover those kind of statistics, which are fascinating, by the way, that you just shared in our last interview, because in that interview I had asked you, has society evolved to the point where it feels there's extraterrestrial activity and more? Are they willing to accept the possibility of it? And you went into those interesting statistics, but also you had a lot to say along the same lines with regards to disclosure when I asked you this. In December of 2017, the New York Times, among other publications, published an article about a top secret program, which you already know about, called AATIP, which stands for Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and released declassified Pentagon footage, well, I think it was 3 videos, which revealed anomalous, unidentified crafts going at unfathomable speeds. And then I asked you to believe the government or journalistic or scientific communities are purposely ignoring the possibility of the presence or possibility of extraterrestrial civilizations.
I'm sorry, that was a question?
Yeah. Well, you said that you felt that disclosure was already happening.
Yeah, I do.
And you didn't seem like you were very impressed either about the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program having declassified 3 videos. It was interesting to you, and you acknowledged it, but it didn't seem like it blew your mind. And you also went on to say that it didn't change anybody in the respect, like everybody went to work the next day. Nobody changed their lives, that kind of thing.
Should we just stop this interview right now and replay play our interview? I'm being held to that. Wow, I have such hubris. Jeez, Dean. Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, so the government has a program they're doing, but the government doesn't talk to each other, the departments.
True. Yeah, I believe that.
So if you have one department that's saying, I think we need to look into this, they're not going to, be intersecting with the deepest bowels of, Majestic 12 or whatever, if there's such a thing. It's going to be this separate component. I mean, Department of Defense, if anyone knows about anything, it's probably them. And then it's got to be some department within a department within a department. Definitely the president has no clue. I don't believe at all, because
I agree.
4 to 8 years. So you're going to open this up to someone who's, going to be in and out. And, I think that the last president who might have known, because I think there was a policy just from what I've heard, and again, this is just, I kind of reason that seems to kind of make sense. Again, I don't know. But the whole story of Jackie Gleason and Nixon, where Nixon, they're out on the golf course, and Nixon says, "So I hear you like UFOs." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got a house shaped in Connecticut like a UFO." And he's like, "Oh, okay. That's interesting." And then he gets a call like that night, and it's Nixon in his own car, in a town car. And Nixon was known for doing this, by the way. He would always try to try to lose the Secret Service. He got off on it. It was something that he would do on occasion. And so he picked him up, and even though the Secret Service were, following them, he picks up Jackie Gleason, and he takes him, I think it was Patterson.
No, he was down in Florida. He was down in Florida.
Florida, yeah. Takes him there and brings him into this, this building, this structure, this hangar at this base, and shows him some of the remains of supposedly the Roswell crash. And then his wife wakes up and at 4 a.m. sees, Jackie getting hammered in the living room. And she's like, "Jackie, what's going on?" And he goes, "Son of a bitch, it's real. It's all, effing real." "What are you talking about?" And he tells her, and this experience, and then she mentions it, and I think it was Life magazine or something.
National
And
Enquirer.
National Enquirer, she mentioned?
Yep.
No, I thought it was mentioned.
Back in those days before they got heavily into the celebrity stuff, they used to do a lot of UFO stuff.
It was a supermarket tabloid. It was,
right, but I thought that she had said it in a more reputable magazine.
No,
so that was one of the factors.
Well, back in those days, for UFO stuff, the Enquirer kind of was, actually. Back then, they kind of evolved their focus over the years, but back in those days, they did a lot of UFO stuff, actually. They were pretty good at it.
And then supposedly from other people, like there was Tom Hanks or someone from the set of Nothing, what was it called? Nothing But Trouble, some film he did, Jackie Gleason with Tom Hanks. And they said Jackie Gleason was talking about the whole time. He was, telling some of the crew people and stuff, this stuff's real, blah, blah. So anyway, that possibly, and so he resigns before he gets impeached. So it's this whole big thing, and then here comes Jimmy Carter. There's no way in hell that, and Jimmy Carter already mentioned he had seen a UFO.
Yeah.
So there's no way in hell they're going to say, oh, okay, you're already someone that, is telling publicly this information. We're not going to tell you anything. Maybe Bush Sr., because he was head of the CIA, knew something, but I just don't see the benefit of saying that. I see, keeping secrets secret. I get that.
Yeah, that is a fascinating story. So it was Beverly Gleason who recounted it. And she said that she'll never forget the night in 1973. Her husband came home slumped, white-faced in an armchair, spilled out the incredible story. It was late around 11:30 p.m. And she heard his key turn in the lock of our golf course home in Florida. And she jumped to her feet and asked, "Where have you been?" He said, "I've been at Homestead Air Force Base. I've seen the bodies of some aliens from outer space. It's top secret. Only a few people know, but the president arranged for me to be escorted there and see them." And then he went on to finish by saying, "There were aliens lying on 4 separate tables. They were tiny, only about 2 feet tall, with small bald heads with disproportionately large ears. They must have been dead for some time because they've been embalmed."
Large ears.
Yeah, I think they misspelled that. They said disproportionately large years, so I'm not quite sure what that means either.
Yeah, I think they meant eyes.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Eyes. Let's substitute that for eyes.
Yeah, maybe they were like little, those little troll dolls. That's what I'm envisioning at 2 feet tall. Yeah,
right, or Dumbo.
And Jackie was apparently none too happy when that story. He was still alive when that story came out. He was not too happy about it.
They say that was in part of the divorce, part of the aggravation that pushed him to get a divorce. But so aliens cause divorce. That's the message from that whole story.
Yeah, that's the moral of the story.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, at the end of the day, it's kind of like the things that we're interested with the aliens. I would think humanity would be communicating with them, not necessarily taking their technology that we haven't earned. I mean, right now, because I mention this a lot, Moore's law is the algorithm, so to speak, chart where we see how humanity develops and how technology develops. And it's always been parallel. And then since the 50s and 60s, it started to branch off, the integrated circuit started to branch off, and we're doing things technology-wise that are beyond our evolution. And so that chart, instead of being a slow increase, is now split off. Moore's law, I mean, we're practically like inverted. It's so disproportionate to how, we're evolved. It's like a cat, a little baby kitten that's running around. Its hind legs are running ahead of its, of itself because it hasn't figured out the coordination of this. We are, a violent, greedy, jealous species. And so, I kind of, until we work that out, and, this bleeds into spirituality. I mean, for me, I look at, all of it. I mean,
speaking of which, my favorite, circling back to different Contact movies, I think my favorite of all time has got to be 2001: A Space Odyssey. That touches on a lot of the things that you're talking about right now. You want to give us your thumbnail thoughts on that particular film?
Horrible film, terrible. Don't bother. It's super long.
Boring, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the monkeys don't hold up. Just really stand it's just like well, first of all, it's a meditation. You go in there to experience. He doesn't have a lot of things going on, action-packed, because he wanted to show the future, and especially with regard to space exploration, he wanted to show the future and show it as mundane as possible, so you felt like literally you were looking into a crystal ball where you could see the future, and you're seeing it just play out. And just by the fact that all the detail from the Pan Am flights and the suits and everything, that would be enough to keep your attention. So he really wanted to be this kind of thing that was taken very serious. Here it is. And there's kind of this, whereas, his other films, he's got much more stuff going on, but this one was much more, subdued in a way. The way that it's broken down, where it's kind of an anthology, right? It starts out with the first story, which is, when the monolith shows up and we see the dawn of man. And then it shows up the second time on the moon, when we're now venturing out to the moon. So now we're going out in space. So now we've, transcended. And the third one...
Just to interrupt here, my big analysis of this, where a lot of people might disagree with me, I don't know anyone who agrees with me, but my feeling is that entire segment, up to the point where they find the monolith on the moon, that entire segment is the dawn of man. So that's a little bit different than most people look at it. Yeah,
well, it could be, because that time, passes... It seems to be fast, but it's really, it seems to be slow, but it's really fast, right? We've only been, at the age that we're at, we're only flying 120, 140 years ago, something like that. Yep. So maybe that is it, except that it's two separate, is it the same monolith? So if it shows up there at the dawn of man, where man hasn't fully become man yet, they're still apes. And so the act of violence, when he grabs the bone and starts using it, is, okay, now the evolution has begun, evolving into what man is, which is this violent, it's funny that he picks that as that technology as the signpost that we're going there. But then when they get to another body, another space body, the moon, then it shows up again. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can find that further.
I think the title cards tell the tale, because I think the title cards tell the tale, where you've got Dawn of Man, then Jupiter Mission, then Beyond the Infinite. So I think that's, but again, hey, it's open to interpretation, and he's often,
absolutely,
Kubrick
and
often
it's
said,
change. Yeah, it'll change every time you see it. It may change. And then the third one, is when he, ends up having that meeting with himself. I just saw some article recently where Kubrick was asked, an interview where he was asked, like Japanese TV or something, about what the third act, meant, where he was seeing himself. And they said he wanted to show that he was on the alien planet, or in the alien reality. And so if you look at that room, it was kind of like the aliens' attempt at recreating Earth for this guy. Which is really fascinating. I'd never heard about that, before. But I always want to leave it, kind of open-ended, so you can interpret it, any way, and worth watching every 10 years. But genius film, again, I see that, and I see Laurence Olivier, and I want to throw away all the camera equipment I have and go, I'm not worthy, and, how do I, strive for something like that? You don't strive for that. You strive to find your own voice, and but amazing, epic masterpiece.
Dean, a few scientists have come forward to talk about this topic of ufology and help to legitimize it, along with their own hypothesis, such as Dr. Jacques Vallée with his own hypothesis. I was going to ask you, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think it's always. We have someone from Harvard right now talking about I'm going to horrendously mispronounce this. Was it the Omama? Something. The Omama.
I can't pronounce it very well either. Yes.
the oblong
object,
object that floated by, and was feeling that it was a probe. Here's someone who's building a strong case for that. Some would say a strong case. So I don't think it needs to be that long if it's a probe, to be honest. So it doesn't make too much sense for me, but who knows it is a weird shape thing. I don't know how space would shape something like that because there's no friction against it. So it would have to have broken off in that weird shape. But I don't know. I don't really have any opinion on that other than I'm glad that it's being, this phenomenon is now being tested, more and more with people that are legit and people who find it interesting. I mean, when all of us were kids, this was considered a really esoteric topic. And, it goes into the tinfoil hat, box. And now it's kind of like, because of Roswell, I mean, Roswell gets a shitload of credit because, Burlett's book and the others that, it was very much them, saying, here is a legitimate conspiracy with witnesses, to the point that, most Americans believe, yes, something definitely happened. Something definitely crash landed there. So that kind of became a whole new mythology or legend or history of America. And so before that, there's no other story like that. People don't remember the miracle at Fatima. They don't remember, was it Guadera, Geraldo? That happened in Missouri.
Cape Girardeau. Yeah.
Cape Girardeau.
Yep.
They don't remember, that, which is also significant. And for me, again, the one that's more significant than anything is the Zimbabwe case. But that is something that we've kind of embraced. And Roswell, the town of Roswell, definitely has embraced it, especially the tourist department. And so, I feel like now it's kind of almost been accepted that something's gone down, and there is some, I think the government substantiated that themselves, though. They get half the credit because of all the ridiculous stories that they kept saying. It's a weather balloon. No, it's a bunch of mannequins. No, it might be children.
Birds.
Yeah, birds. It's like, come on, stop. Put down the stupid stick. Just don't say anything. That's the best line of defense for you if you want to, discount that. But, and you can get bent out of shape and say, God damn it, this is our experience as well. It's not just a few select, people in the Pentagon or whatever. We should see the wreckage. We should see all this stuff. And, but, let's be realistic about, how these things happen. And by the way, if Roswell really happened, then that means there's no such thing as time travel for these creatures. They're definitely not from the future, because they would go back and they would fix, the craft and make sure it didn't get hit by lightning or whatever. Or they would just show up and then take the ships. I mean, supposedly they did see another ship after that, but it was too late. We got our hands on them. So I like to muse about that, all right, well, that goes off the table.
That's interesting.
Unless we're in a parallel universe, but then why go back in time at all? So I don't know.
Yeah, because Frank and I know various people, I won't mention their names, who are well known, who still believe, despite the incident, and actually it was Corona, New Mexico, but we can call it Roswell, the Roswell incident, that still believe that they, being the extraterrestrials, whoever they are, come from the future. Anyway, what I was going to mention here is that I believe that your film helped to legitimize UFO culture. And I also want to thank you for having done it, because I have met a lot of people who are experiencers and contactees, and they believe that they have had a authentic experience regarding not only witnessing extraterrestrial craft, but they also believe they have met extraterrestrials. And your having done this film really helps them in many ways. Have any of these people who have viewed your film come forward to you later to talk to you about their own personal experiences?
Yes, they have. It's It's strange. There's a certain percentage of people that you have to kind of compartmentalize. But the first night when I was at the International UFO Congress convention, I went out to a fire pit, and there were a bunch of people that were. It was just outside the lobby, and there were a lot of people that were there, and I just kind of settled up and said, "Hey, what interests you here?" And I'm interviewing this guy, and he's telling me that he's Vulcan. He's a Vulcan, and that he had his ears fixed when he was a kid, and all this stuff. And there's someone else saying that his ankle was healed by an alien, but then he had like some other cancer or something. So it's kind of like, all right, the ankle got healed, but not the main thing. So there's a certain part where you go, okay, well, I'll take that and go, okay, well, maybe not. And then you have other people that come up and tell you this thing, and you look at their eyes and you can tell that they've witnessed something. And there's a natural skeptic in me that as much as I want to believe, I want to make sure that I'm donating to a worthy cause, my belief system. And so I've had people that have told me that they've had these experiences and that they didn't necessarily want them. And the question, the 64,000 question is, what do they want other people who haven't experienced that to know? And their answers range. But I think the main one that I've gotten is, we just want, people to understand that this is real, that I'm having this legitimate experience, and to honor that, regardless of any kind of proof or outcome, this or that. This is what's happening. And a lot of them are open to the fact that they said, if this is a psychosis, then it's a psychosis. I hope it's just that. But when I went to this one experiences group, there was a guy who was from the military, young guy. He's got 2 young kids, big guy. He came in and mentioned that his kids said they were drawing pictures and said that the little skeleton people came to see them last night. And he was furious. He's a big guy. He was formidable. He was furious. He wanted answers. He was demanding answers. This was his first meeting. And he was pissed off. He's like, I've been dealing with this shit my whole life, and now it's happening to my kids. We've never talked to them about this. They've never been aware of any of this stuff. I've been keeping it hidden from them. And now they're telling me, that they're experiencing these little guys that come in with, look like skeletons because they have big black eyes and big heads, and they're thin. And he's like, what do I do about this now? Because I can't have this go on. And in fact, he wanted me to sneak into his house and videotape, set up cameras and hopefully catch them. And he said he had tried to do it and it didn't work. And he thought maybe by him knowing about it, he somehow was alerting them. And so my feeling was, I don't have the time to go down that, rabbit hole to an extent. But more importantly, if they're the technology, if they're that advanced, there's nothing, I can't go in there. I can't out Wile E. Coyote aliens from another planet. It's, just not going to happen. And so my feeling is that, they are super advanced if this is happening. And, these people who are experiencing this, most of them have integrated it, that have had this, for many years, they've integrated it into their lives and look at it as a positive. Look at it as I'm one of the chosen, if you will. That doesn't mean that they're going around prancing around like they have, some superiority complex. Not at all. They're just, we were chosen for whatever reason, and we're accepting this. And a lot of times, especially the artists, they incorporate that into their work. And so that's important because, I think if you can outwardly, if you're affected, no matter what you do, you're affected, that's going to get projected out into the world. And so as long as that's a positive message, I'm all for that.
So you studied the topic of ufology most of your life in many different respects from all different angles. I'm just curious, why did you choose the story of a family being abducted on Also such an important day, being a birthday for one of the children in the family. Why did you choose that particular and exact topic to do for a movie?
Well, there was one influence, one story that I had read that influenced me more than any other as far as the actual infrastructure of the story, which was the Kelly Hopkinsville.
Yes, I remember that case. Yeah, the
Yeah.
family that was accosted by extraterrestrials. There was a war between them.
In Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah.
And Spielberg, in fact, was going to tell that story with E.T. The original version was going to be that. And then he found himself falling in love with one of the aliens that was the nicer alien, E.T. And so it morphed into become E.T. And so I thought, well, that didn't get taken advantage of. I love that story of a family that gets, attacked, and the fact that it's a nucleus of a family. And Spielberg, who I'm a great admirer of, all of his stories are family based. All of them are family related. And so, and they're a broken family. From Close Encounters, a family's fracturing, is breaking down, to E.T., recently, separated family, parents. And so I grew up divorced, and so it just made sense for me to co-opt that, to tell that story from a way that personalized it and made it like, Middle America is experiencing this thing. And so that was a huge, and that story was the big influence for me. And I think that's why I particularly gravitated towards that story. And plus you get the full range. You get a child in there, and then you have, someone up to, a 60-something-year-old parent. So you've got full range of people of what their experiences would be, and, from young to old.
Dean, doubling back really quick, you had mentioned artists having these contact experiences. Certainly, a lot of the classic rockers seem to be very upfront about it, talk about it very openly. Hendrix and David Bowie are two that really jump to mind.
John Lennon also.
Yep. Well, yeah, he had a sighting. Definitely Hendrix wrote songs about
Sammy
it.
Hagar.
Bowie, Sammy Hagar with the Abduction. You're in the movie business, without dropping any names necessarily, although we'd be glad to hear them if you've got them. But have you heard any stories from folks in the film industry recounting these types of things? Scuttlebutt, does this kind of thing come up in Hollywood?
I could tell you, but the Men in Black would. So you don't want that, so I'm going to. No, I've never intersected with anyone. I mean, I've heard stories of, I think it was, and Whitley Strieber mentioned it. I think it was Rosie O'Donnell had her own experience. I know that Yvonne Smith has said that she does have some clients and stuff that are known people. Enough that it's happening, and enough that people keep it on the down low. But I haven't intersected with that. And what's interesting is Yvonne and some of the people in her group, wonderful people, they said that there had been a crew that had filmed one or two of them before, and were listening to, some that knew nothing about this, and were listening to some of the questions, and then some of the answers that they were saying in the interviews, giving, and they realized that they had earmarked, the signs of being abducted. Now, I'm someone who is avidly interested in this subject, and I have combed through my childhood and through my life with a fine-tooth comb, looking for missing time, looking for anything, signs, of, waking up with a bloody nose, from that to anything. Zero. It's really upsetting. But I see, these people that have experienced this, and I know there's a lot of people that want to be a part of a group. And so it's easy for people to co-opt that, because there's no way you can prove that. Like if someone says, I'm a Vietnam vet and I'm part of that subculture now, and well, you can prove it by pulling up records. You can't do that with, show me the alien secret handshake. So it's I don't, the people that I've spoken with, they're, terrified. Still, it's stressful. They've made peace with it, and they kind of go with it as best they can. I don't want that. I don't want my, my offspring and their offspring to experience that. So I'm fine being, a bystander in this. I like to have my experience with them, but I don't want to be, I don't want to, I don't want the probe. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't want the probe.
And just for the record, everybody, in my younger days, I experienced lots of missing time, but I can assure you all it was not ET related. So.
I'm thinking I'm going back to Jimi Hendrix now. Maybe some psychedelics, but go
on. Something anecdotal I wanted to bring up that's totally random, which Dean and I had talked about before, is UFO investigator Dr. Jacques Vallée had said he had uncovered and found out that during the Watergate trials, false flag plans were uncovered and originating in the White House to fake the second coming of Christ by using holograms mounted on the surface of a submarine, which would result in an attack on Cuba. And you just thought that was hilarious, Dean.
Yeah. Well, with all due huge respect for Jacques Vallée.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Jacques Vallée, professor. The thing is, the government has never had a shortage of ridiculous, asinine ideas. So yes. I don't doubt that actually happened. I'll totally endorse that. And if Jacques says it happened, it happened. The problem is, and we'll just go back 18 years to 9/11. Okay, so here these two planes fly in, take down these buildings. And so the conspiracies start in. Those buildings never should have been taken down. We controlled all of that. We set it up. Why were they detonated? There was some other building that all this stuff, and it goes on and on and on. And then from that, we end up in Iraq because they have weapons of mass destruction. And guess what happens? We get there. Are there any weapons of mass destruction? No. So you're telling me that the government engineered two planes flying perfectly into the Twin Towers and detonated it and hid all that and executed that amazingly precise, choreography. But they couldn't plant weapons, items of mass destruction. They couldn't have had those brought in, shipped in, and set that up. That's a huge, huge mistake. So it doesn't make, that's giving the government too much credit that they could actually pull off something like that. Again, I do think that the government schemes and comes up with stuff, and some things they've tried and failed abundantly. But as far as, when I look back at the government and their interaction, with UFOs, I'll just go to my hometown of Los Angeles, and we can talk about the LA, battle for LA, where you've got all of these ships being seen, UFOs being seen, one big one, and everyone's firing up at that. That happened in
1942.
In 42. And so right after, year after, Pearl Harbor. So that's pretty credible. I don't know how to get more credible than that. People saw it. Thousands of people saw it. People still alive. Talk about that. So, to stage something like that, you can't, we don't have the technology to do that back then, but,
same thing with the moon landing hoax. People don't believe that we got people to the moon. Like, I remember watching those moonwalks live when they were getting broadcast, back in the late 60s into the very early 70s. And I watched every science fiction film, including 2001 back in those days too. And I'm telling you, they didn't fake any of that stuff. Pretty much everything looked pretty fake that was done in the science fiction realm back in those days. And nothing aroused
Stanley Kubrick took great folly with the theories that he had created the moon, because his stuff was so good that he had actually created the moon landing. My favorite is, you don't see any stars. why are there no stars? And I'm like, okay, do you know the surface of the moon is really pale, light gray, super bright? When you adjust your camera to be able to expose for that, so you can see the crevices and craters and stuff, that exposure is not going to be able to hold little pinpoint dots as well.
Yeah. When they're on the moon doing those moonwalks, it's broad daylight on the moon. The reason the sky is black is because they don't have the atmosphere that we do here on Earth.
Exactly. And if you look up the reason why, to some degree, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you'll have a blue sky and stuff, because some of it is also some of the color is also reflective of the oceans and stuff like that, et cetera. So which leads me back to my favorite topic, which are the flat earthers.
Oh God!
How did we get here? See, this is where I go.
Yeah.
I'm from another planet, and I'm going to come to a planet where some of the people can't even agree that the planet is a planet.
Right. Also, I wanted to ask you if there's anybody, movie directors out there, anybody that aspires to do movies, it'd be important for them to be able to hear what kind of advice you might have as far as equipment. If you wouldn't mind just rattling off a few things regarding what you might advise people to consider buying and what kind of budget they might need in order to create their own movies, even if it's just with what little equipment they might be able to afford.
Well, I wish you would have given me a heads up on this, because I would have gotten a sponsor so I could get some free equipment for myself. So barring that, separate from the beg, borrow, and steal school of filmmaking, which I started out being a part of. And
you can't always rent stuff in a pinch.
Yes. In fact, I rented the original UFO Abduction. And by the way, the name, the McPherson Tape, was the original name of the remake. And when we went up to shoot it in Vancouver, the name was, I've got my cap that says, the McPherson Tapes, or McPherson Tape. That was the name that we had. And then when we got back, everyone was fired at UPN. And so when we came back, again, we were still too ahead of the curve. We were ahead by a year and a half. Blair Witch came out a year and a half later. The new head of the company was like, what the hell is this shit? We're taking this over. We're going to cut it down to an hour. We're going to change the name from the McPherson Tape to Alien Abduction Incident Lake County. And so I had no say in that. They just took it and did that. And then they did interviews with people like Stan Friedman, who I did not interview. I interviewed all the fictional people and everything. And so this woman producer came on board and shot real UFO experts, including Yvonne Smith.
Including yourself. You interviewed yourself in that movie?
Well, that's not in the domestic 1 hour version. The foreign version kept the name McPherson Tape in a lot of markets. And so that's why it has the kind of AKA, also known as the McPherson Tape. And then over the years, for some reason, the original one has been called the original McPherson Tape. So it's a little bit confusing, the conspiracies or the tracking of the film history of this, but just to clear it up, that's it. Getting back to the up and coming next filmmaker who's going to encroach on my filmmaking territory, I will say DSLR cameras are terrific. I've got a Canon 5D Mark III. Love that camera. It's terrific, amazing. There's a cheaper camera right now called Black Magic Cinema Pocket Camera, which is a 4K camera, which means the resolution is very high. That camera is $1,300. And it comes with a $300 color grading where you can color the film app. So really the camera is only $1,000. It's a great buy. That's the only camera to get out there. Unfortunately, it's in such demand, and they just came out with it last year, that you can order it, but it's in pre-order. If you look really hard, you can find places, but they've jacked the price up where you can find on eBay, stuff like that. But that's a great camera. The thing that I always encourage young filmmakers is don't just grab a camera and think because it's high definition. By high definition, I mean it's high resolution. 4K, that it's going to do all the work. No, you have to light. You have to light. And luckily, lights are super cheap. You can get these LED panels that you can adjust the color so that if you're inside, you would do what is called tungsten. And that has a warmer look because lights usually are balanced to that, so it matches. And then when you're outside, you do what's, daylight, which is a cooler, more bluish light. But these things are very cheap. I mean, we're talking like a couple $100 or less. Some of them are like $50. But you can get the equipment and everything, get loaded up for bear for easily, a lot less than $5,000. When I was starting out, it was 16 millimeter, and the film was super expensive. And so, with regards to what you do with it, tell stories that are your story. It's okay to spend some time in resting development where you are imitating your heroes, and you're trying to do that on a low budget and stuff. That impulse is going to be there. So just fulfill it. Go ahead and make those crappy films that are overextending yourself. I have several of them myself. But the thing that's going to set you apart, and the thing that's going to get you where you want to go as far as being someone who's an artist and being paid, especially just being an artist, is finding your voice. We all want to hear new voices. There is nothing more appealing, no special effect, more impressive than having some new voice that comes through. So I would encourage anyone, it doesn't matter what you're shooting on, whether it's your iPhone. Steven Soderbergh just made his second film shot on an iPhone. So it really doesn't matter anymore. It's just have an interesting story and try to tell it in a way that serves that story. So, if you have a story that's, a human condition story, you can tell it maybe handheld. And if you're going to do, some thriller or whatever, put the camera on tripod and stuff and try to, do that. Watch other filmmakers, learn from them. But allow yourself to make mistakes. Find your voice. Find what's unique about you. What do you have to say? Otherwise, put the mic down. There's other people that would, that want to pick that up and say something.
And that applies to documentary as well as any kind of fictional film?
God, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, have a point. Be open to having it change, because you'll get out and you interview people and you've had this idea, this conceit of, wow, my documentary is about this. Let it tell you. Like when I write a script, I used to do a ton of outlining, and I still occasionally do that. But at some point when I start writing, I burn the outline. I don't go back to it. I let the story inform me. I let it tell me where to go. I believe there are muses that we have out there. In fact, it was common practice for the artists, Plato's time and before, that would give credit to their muses, and people who would read their stuff or see their art, they would say, wow, they must have an amazing muse. You get ideas, divine, ideas come, sparkle, some catalyst, some idea will hit you. I think that, comes from something greater than us, and why not? And how cool is that? So,
yeah, a few questions I have are, why did you use the found footage technique? I'll just start off with that one. Why did you use that kind of style for your movie?
Budget. Strictly budget.
And then the other question I have is, do you feel your film is as relevant today as the first day it came out? And if so, why?
I do remember you asking me this before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's my answer? Can I cheat?
Yes.
It might have changed. I would say that, it's relevant in a historic sense, I guess. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I'm reaching around to pat myself on the back. Hold on. Okay, there we go. I didn't intend to be the first one to do it. And I know there's a whole big controversy. Like you go online, you'll see that people going, what is the first found footage? And they'll say it's Cannibal Holocaust and all this stuff. And I go,
we did see that.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's not actually a found footage movie, guys. Sorry, a found footage film is a film by definition that has been found in its entirety. It's usually a film that is accompanied with a disclaimer in the front or an introduction that says this footage was found and here it is uncut, all laid out. And so found footage, you know, that the strictest term of it, I guess I would be the first one to do that. And Bloody Disgusting did a little thing on that, which I found really amusing. It doesn't matter. I was one of the people, however you want to say, it doesn't matter. For me, it was, you know, that is relevant in that it's a new narrative. There hasn't been really a narrative in filmmaking since, you know, maybe the invention of, you know, well, the mockumentary, the fake documentary. Yeah. And then before that, I would say editing. You know, the idea that you can edit from one time frame, you know, not just flashbacks, but the Great Train Robbery was the first one to utilize that silent film, where they went from one part of the train to the other and they cut back and forth. It was considered genius, you know, at the time, and then opened things up for, you know, other types of editing techniques. So I would say that it's relevant in that it was kind of one of the, you know, a precursor to all this. But the story, I would say it's still relevant in that it's still showing something that is still going on and we don't have answers to. And so maybe anything, just like rereading Communion, not that I'm saying they're on equal territory at all or equal level, but I'm saying that that's something that, you know, is an example. It's not like it's so prevalent that there's alien abduction films out there that I'm aware of. You know, there've been a few out there, like The Fourth Kind and stuff like that. But for me, it really still hasn't been one that really answers it. And that one, you know, I would hope to make myself, which would be somewhere between Close Encounters and Contact, where it's done in a way that, you know, or not even Contact. Maybe it's a mesh of, you know, Close Encounters and you know, something, you know, Alien Abduction, where we actually get a chance to see the abduction going down, but done in a way that's really, really precise with regards to following what people, you know, believe, take it to the next level. You know.
Yeah, I think it can be compared to the book because you do have a massive following of fans regarding your movie. And then I did want to ask you, if you could interview an extraterrestrial being, what questions would you ask?
Do they have avocado plants? What the hell is up with the pit? It's so huge. It's a waste. I would, boy, what would I say? Or ask. I think I would ask them, are we going to make it? Based on where we are now, what our track record is, where we're headed, are we going to make it?
That's a great question.
Dean, really quick, just to cycle back to the tech talk a little bit, can you talk a little bit about lenses for people who are interested in getting into all this? That can be especially with the DSLR cameras, obviously you can attach any lens that that particular manufacturer makes to their camera. Talk a little bit about lenses, if you can, a little bit. Because that might be something that might get overlooked a little bit by folks just getting into cameras and gear and all that.
That's the thing that fits on the front of the camera, right?
As far as I know, yeah.
Circular and glass. Yeah. It depends what you know, there's some filmmakers, I love this. What they'll do is they'll pick one lens and they'll say, that's the lens I'm going to choose for my whole movie. Everything's going to be shot on that. You can do that with a 50 millimeter lens, certainly, and you can do it with, like, if you saw the movie The Favorite, he had a wide angle lens. I think he used pretty much the whole time. I don't know if there's any long lens shots in that whole movie. But a good go-to lens is going to be a zoom lens. And you want one, ideally, but not necessary, that has the same f-stop, which means that it has the same exposure from being zoomed in to zoom out. Because if you get one that isn't, when you zoom in, because you're using more of the glass, it will be darker. And so then all of a sudden your image gets darker if you're doing it within that shot. So it's just much easier to have a camera that has a really fast lens. That's what they call it, where you can zoom in and out and it's the same exposure. The size that I like, that I think is just like a workhorse lens, is the anywhere from like the 35 to 50 they have, or something around there, where you want to be up above 20, and you don't need to go, further than really 75. The lens that came with my Canon was the 24 to 105, which is an awesome lens. I'm sure there's a faster version of that. My f-stop changes dramatically, so I have to.
Yeah, that happens with the bigger zooms for sure.
Yeah, but I
go
love
from
that.
Usually maybe like a 2.8 to 5.5, something along those lines.
Yeah, I went out and I bought a bunch of primes, and I bought these Rokinon primes, and they're touted as being cinema lenses and everything. Well, I compared them with my basic Canon 24 to 105 lens, and mine beat it. It didn't have any lens aberration or anything. It was great. So I'm a big fan of that lens, 24 to 105.
Okay.
So if you're starting out, that's the killer lens to be doing. And later on, when you want to put more money into it, then it's worth investing in getting a lens that's.
So prime lenses, for the folks at home who don't know, that's a lens that you can't zoom either in or out. If it's a 50 millimeter lens, it's 50. If it's 35, fixed zoom, basically.
Yeah, it's lighter usually too, because it's just one lens size. It doesn't have to work at both sides of the barrel.
And you don't think it's that big a deal that it's 100% necessary to get a prime lens right out of the box?
No.
Okay.
No. Again, I'm more concerned that you tell a good story than than anything else. One thing is, I guess I'm endorsing here, even though they're not giving me a kickback, and they should. I'll have to call them after this. B&H, their prices are always very competitive, and you don't have to pay taxes if you do not live in New York.
So can you say that acronym again? That way people can hear it clearly.
B as in boy, and like the symbol and H.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, right.
B&H photos in New York.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah.
Adorama's another one. I don't know about the sales tax with them, but that's another big company. And Sammy's is out west.
Sammy's. Yeah, we have a Sammy's. I bought my camera there actually.
So that's another one that they've got the selection for sure.
Are you willing to divulge to us, Dean, the kinds of equipment you have in entirety, or tell us a little? Is it a secret?
Very personal question. I guess this is the second interview with you, so I can share. Well, that's pretty much it. I have my 5D Mark III.
Okay.
So the person who's going to burglar me right now is right. Okay, 5D. I got to pick the 5D. What else does he have?
Right.
I have a Rode mic, Pro mic that I put on my camera. So I have a microphone there, and then I've got I have a couple LED lights. I don't know the name of them, but they're like little light panels. One is like 6 inches by like 4 inches, 4 by 6. And then the other one is larger. I don't know what that was, 10 by something. And then reflectors, always good to have those reflectors that can fold up so you can take them anywhere and open them up so you can bounce them off if you want to, do what is called soft light. So I have that. I have, very important, super important, I have a really good tripod that I have, and because you want to be able to have one that has a nice lens, fluid lens. Now, a tripod you can get used and get a good deal, and then you just test it out. But that's a good example of used material you can get.
Yeah, if you're spending a couple $3,000 on gear, you don't want to be playing cheap on the tripod.
God, no. Yeah, you want to have one that has varied torque on it, so you can have different drags on it, so that it's not super loose. You're flying all over the place. You want it to be nice and smooth. And then, let's see, I have a slider that I really love. Where what a slider is, it's like a little mini dolly track that's maybe 4 feet to 5 feet in length. And you mount your camera on it, and then you can slide the whole apparatus back and forth. And so you can simulate a dolly move or a tracking shot. And if you put an angle, you can make it like a little mini crane, which I also have a little mini crane that fits in this bag. It's like a 6 or 8 foot crane. I don't know who makes that one, but
okay. And any other different kinds of microphones? Can you mention any?
Sennheiser. Sennheiser is always good. Anything they sell.
Okay.
You know, I did this quasi-documentary project, Filmmaking, I guess. So you can really get into the weeds here, because a mockumentary this is Spinal Tap. A Filmmaking is just a fake, documentary. I did a Filmmaking, and I knew that I was going to be moving around a lot. It was just going to be me and my partner on the project and the actor, and that was it. And so what I did is I got these Tascam, I think it was 101, and they're these they look like those little wireless microphones, lavaliers, packs that you have. And instead of it being wireless and sending the signal to your camera and recording it, it records it onto a memory card, a very small memory card that has 32 gigabytes. That card will last days. And when I mean days, in the morning, we would turn them on. So I would, put it on my actor, turn it on in the morning, and then turn it off at night. And I can go 2 or 3 days. They last that long. So great. And that microphone never gets distorted because it isn't wireless. The only thing is, if an actor bumps their hand on it, then you're going to have to later on dub over that. But if you do a few takes and stuff, hopefully they won't bang it at the same time. And then you can ask them to do one take where they don't do that. But it's the wireless. That means not wireless. Excuse me. The microphone is attached to the little small pack, and so the wire goes up. It's tucked under the shirt, goes up, and then there's like a little microphone at the end, and then that gets fastened. And so that worked extremely well. That was really good. Saved me. And again, to get into the technical weeds here, I would have, because it comes with 2 channels that you're recording the audio, I would have one set to be high and one low. So if someone was yelling, I could go to the low channel so it doesn't blow out. If someone was talking too quiet, I could go to the higher channel.
Now, is that something you need to record audio separately with, or is this something you get all on the same SD card that's inside the camera?
I record that along with recording my camera with my Rode mic. So what happens is, when I'm going to now edit this, is I bring in all the clips, and I can see the waveform. And in fact, there's an app called Pluralize, and that finds it for you, and it syncs it up. And so I take both those separate elements, and then I sync it up. The wireless version is more convenient because in only one way, which is that it records. You can send it to the camera with a receiver, and then it records onto the actual camera. But again, if it goes in and out and the battery dies on you or whatever, mostly about frequency when it goes in and out, because cars will go by, someone's radio or phone could get it all jacked up, you're screwed. And so this was just more of a trouble proof, audio proof remedy for gun and running, moving really fast. Just turn on the mic and be gone the whole day, and that was it. So I like that. And those things cost, by the way, they're $200 each. That microphone, and so it comes with the pack and the microphone, and I think it comes with a headset and maybe a 16 gigabyte card. Not too bad.
Okay. And with the Rode, obviously, it's not a good idea. I don't need to talk to a professional filmmaker like Dean Alioto to know that it's not a good idea to do the audio off the internal mic in any camera. You really should get an external mic.
Yeah.
So you do need to look for a camera that is at the level that at least has an external mic input.
The problem with the camera mic that's mounted to the camera is that it picks up the camera noise. the noise of the machinery of the camera recording. That's not great. That was a real bummer, but because it was a filmentary, we were able to actually have it under the guise that, well, this is a documentary crew. They're having to rough it, run and gun. But you could get a cage for your camera, which is just an outside metal structure that it doesn't cover the whole thing, just like a section of it. And it has these little arms and stuff that you can get where it branches out, these little metal arms that you can screw a mic in. So it's kind of not directly touching the camera. So you don't get that. So it's a little further away. That's a nice remedy for that as well. But you always want to record from something like that, because then you've got a guide track that you can sync to. Otherwise, you got to look at actors' mouths, and you have to do a slate and everything else.
Dean, before we let you go,
I was going to ask if you were still with us there, Chant.
Yeah, no, I'm still here. I was just listening for once instead of talking. What I was going to ask you, Dean, is you say you're
the most honest podcaster I've ever spoken with.
Yeah, I know I talk too much.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I like to hear myself talk. Dean, you're going to be finishing a movie up here in about a month or so. Can you let us know just a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I did my first out-and-out horror film. Mm-hmm. I guess you could say that my movies, the alien abduction films, are a little bit of sci-fi horror. I would say more sci-fi thriller dramas. But this is a supernatural horror film. And of course, there's Levity in it. And the basic story of the film is it's about these low rent. It's very meta, meaning it's this low rent ghost tracking crew. They're at the end of their first season. They refuse. Well, the guy who hosts it, and it's his team, he refuses to fake scares. So it's kind of a metaphor for fake news that's out there. Mm-hmm. So, but that's not that, in your face. It's just kind of a component of it. But they decide collectively, all right, let's, we're going to not be welcomed back by the network to do a second season if we don't come up with something. So they start engineering, augmenting a little bit the scares. And when they do that, they open Pandora's box. And we've got fantastic actors in it. Ryan Merriman, who was in Final Destination movies, a whole bunch of other ones. We've got Jamie. Oh my God, I'm so brain dead. What's Jamie's last name? Oh my God, she's going to kill me.
You'll remember at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it's going to come back to me.
Right.
And she was in From Dusk Till Dawn. And then we've got this other great actor who was in, he's in the new True Detectives. Mm-hmm. Mike Whitford is his name. Yeah, and then also we have Heather Langenkamp. For those of you who are fans of Nightmare on Elm Street, she's Nancy, who was in all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I believe, and several other lovely horror films. She's in it as well, and the film is really, really fun. I'm doing color correction, and so it'll be done the end of next month, and we'll be going out there with it. But yeah, it plays fun with the genre, and it's. I think you guys are really going to dig it.
Yeah, the name of the movie is Portal, and it's a supernatural horror dark comedy, and you anticipate that coming out probably within a month or thereabouts, right?
Well, it means we finish at the end of February, and then it goes out to the distributors. We're waiting to hear back from some film festivals that we're hoping to get into, and then we'll do the whole film festival horror festival circuit for a year. So we'll be coming around to a neighborhood near you, I'm sure.
Great.
But ideally, you would see it on the big screen. And then, if not, there'll be video on demand, stuff like that, and DVDs, Blu-rays, etc.
Well, I certainly hope you'll allow us down the road, after the dust settles, after Portal comes out, to have us interview you about that movie. We would love to hear back from you on that.
I will be so rich and famous, I doubt it. But
I would like to let everybody know that UFO Abduction, the movie, can be purchased at ufoabductionmovie.com. And I did have one last question for you, Dean. Frank might have one too, but the question I have for you is there anything else you would like to cover regarding the topic of ufology, whether it be cinematic related or not? But is there anything you'd like to cover left about the topic of ufology? If you could make a statement about it, what would you say?
Sure. One more thing, if I may, on UFO abduction. It's it's now the 30th anniversary of the film, and there's a wonderful festival that is in Austin, Texas, called Fantastic Fest, and the programming director of that festival happens to be a fan of the film, and he is going to re-release it, bring it out for the festival. And he's also going to release it theatrically. It'll be in a dozen theaters in 2020. So right now you can, it's available on DVD, but you'll be able to see it and digital download as well. But you'll be able to see it on the big screen as well. All right, enough plugging. Okay, what hasn't been said about the UFO phenomenon, our ufology. First of all, why can't we get a degree in ufology? I mean, we can get one in quantum physics, which is all abstract based on theory. Why can't we should get that? What would that school look like, that campus? I want to go there. I would say that the people who are getting into it, especially the young guys, like Ryan Sprague is a buddy of mine. He's got an awesome podcast.
Yeah, we know him.
Yeah, he does. Yep.
He's super cool, nice guy, high on the integrity meter. I mean, he's someone who, we will talk about certain stories that are being tracked that shouldn't be tracked. He's got a lot of, we both have a litmus test that we apply to anything. So there's people like that out there that, we kind of collectively tried to make advancements with regards to getting the word out there and tracking really good stories. I think I would like to see more reporting and less, and honest, reporting, and less grandizing or less, pursuing things in a way to co-opt them in order to, basically incense or throw, gasoline on the fire. I would really love this to be looked upon like quantum physics, where we're able to look at it as this genuine phenomenon. And what does this mean? And what does it mean as, psychological, sociology-wise, anthropological-wise, I mean, across the board. And so I kind of, wish that a lot of the people that are out there, and we could talk for days about this, but all I will say is that, it's tough to do the UFO circuit, because you do what you have to say, and what you're coming at it, your unique take on it. And then if you want this to be your career, to be doing this, you've got to come back around with new material. And so it's kind of like 24-hour news. There's only so much news that's out there. And so having to balance that and keep that going, let's continue pushing ourselves in a way that is still discerning what's real and what isn't. Where I get a little saddened is when people start engineering certain things to keep, if you will, in the game, and co-opt certain stories and run with those, even when things have been disproven. Then for me, it's like, and I get that everyone needs to make money, and there's definitely entertainment in this business, right? And so I hope that people kind of at the end of the day, come at it from a way that is not going to be a disservice to the phenomenon and only legitimizes it. You know, any documentary that I do is meant to legitimize it, not to, you know, hype it or whatever. You know, I want to start seeing documentaries that are done that look like, you know, Ken Burns documentaries, where it's, you know, handled extremely well and they have a decent budget. And it's, you know, done with people across the board. And people don't necessarily believe in it, who can offer some, you know, criticism, and that we can test the fabric, you know, of this. So that's my hope.
I just wanted to reference a little bit about Fantastic Fest so people know more about it. They have a small blurb about it on their site. It says Fantastic Fest is the largest genre film festival in the U.S., specializing in horror, fantasy, sci-fi, action, and just plain fantastic movies from all around the world. The festival is dedicated to championing and challenging thought-provoking cinema. And then they go on to say that in the past they have had world premieres concerning certain movies like Bone Tomahawk, John Wick, Machete Kills, Red Dawn, There Will Be Blood, Apocalypto, Zombieland, Red Split, Overlord, Apostle, The Night Comes for Us, and also Portal will be featured there. A movie
Portal
that
is?
Dean, well, it will be, right? Dean Alioto will actually.
I hope
right?
so.
Yes.
I know that UFO Abduction is going to be there, the original,
Right.
for the
The
30th
original,
anniversary.
okay.
We're looking at possibly submitting that to Portal. That would be a great venue.
Yeah.
It's a terrific festival. In fact, they did Bad Times at Hotel Del Rey, and they also did the new Halloween film. They debuted that at the festival, and yeah, they're all over the board. I mean, they have a great. Their main agenda is let's show films that are fun, genre based, but also films that are hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool.
It would be great to see Portal being featured there.
Yes.
Also.
Oh,
Frank, did you have any questions for Dean?
Well, just one last question for you before I get to the most important question of the day, what's for dinner? But Dean, one last question. You had mentioned being interested in the ATIP news that came out at the end of 2017. Did that bit of news perk up your interest in all this, or has it been pretty steady over the years?
I thought the footage was interesting. Obviously, we're talking about the stuff in San Diego, the Tic Tac footage. But for me, what was more interesting wasn't the footage. You know, I still really want to see a nice, clear shot of these guys. It was the reaction of the pilot and the tower. It was their banter back and forth that was super telling. That to me, you know, here's someone that has been on, you know, countless missions, been flying around a long time, knows all the different planes that are out there. They have to. They're experts. And for them to see something that's moving in a way that shouldn't is phenomenal. I mean, that to me is the proof that I'm looking at, is the human experience of someone who's witnessing this, because it's murky footage. So the person who's there, man on the street or woman on the street, that to me is you know, appealing, and so that to me legitimized it more than anything else, actually, for me.
Alrighty then, let's wrap this up, folks. Dean, thank you so very much for coming on with us. It was a blast. I had a great time talking to you. I really did. And be happy to send you some links if you want to stay up on what's happening with the news. A couple of really good sources to stay up on, and I'll get that off to you. And thanks so very much again. And
great,
Chant,
my pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Chant, again, thanks for coming on and co-hosting with me here today. And you got anything for us on the way out?
No, you go ahead. That's fine.
I was going to say, you asked me what I'm going to have for dinner. So
yeah.
Yeah, what are you going to have for dinner, Dean? We want to know.
I am thinking a nice pesto chicken with maybe a little pasta and steamed vegetables. But we'll see how ambitious I get in a couple hours.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to have. My understanding is that dessert is always best first. So I'm probably going to have a chocolate cake with a Guinness beer. And then if there's maybe any steak left over, because I have a big family. They're in from town right now.
You are officially my backup girlfriend. It's all through the tummy. Yeah. It's all through the stomach. I'm like, that's a spread.
Steak and potatoes kind of person I am, yeah. But I have to have dessert first, because my understanding is it's always good to have dessert first before eating. It's good. It's better for the body. I don't know why.
You and my girlfriend would get along great. She does the same thing. I'm like, what are you doing? It's a cupcake. Come on. She's like, no. Yeah. All right.
I feel very lucky. I don't really gain weight that fast, so I feel, very lucky in that regard.
Yeah. No one likes a braggart. Okay.
Okay. No, I'm gonna brag. Yeah.
All right, so thanks again, Dean, and thanks for joining us, everybody. We're going to turn it back around to do it all again all over tomorrow with Dr. Diana Pasulka, so author of American Cosmic. I got to throw that in there. So be sure to tune in on that one, and good night, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.